Good afternoon and welcome to the Transportation Seminar, Fall 2005, Portland State University Center for Transportation Studies. We're very pleased to have Professor Steve Fickas from the University of Oregon, one of our new partners under our new Transportation Center, here to speak to us about the GO project, helping people access their community through assistive technology. Steve.
Thank you. I think I'm probably missing an intro slide here. I'm Steve Fickas. This is a multidisciplinary project. I'm a computer scientist. You want a background? I've been in Oregon a long time, about 20 years now. And this project started, I'd say, roughly 5 or 6 years ago when I kept going to the same coffee shop as another professor, McKay Solberg, who I didn't know, but eventually I said, we said hi and so forth. And she's in cognitive rehabilitation at the University of Oregon. It's through the School of Education on the campus. She runs a clinic. And I don't know, we were just chatting, and she said, I think some of the people I work with could really use some computer software, but it's just they can't use what they've got now. I mean, it's just not working. Would any of your students be interested in seeing if they could build some software for my population? We can try it out. And I said, sure, that sounds like a fun project. We actually ended up holding a joint class in, 5 or 6 years ago. And we had some success with that. There were two things we looked at that point. We were looking at the specific problem of social isolation with this population. We were looking at mostly traumatic brain injury folks. So that this is a kind of a subcategory, if you like, of people with a cognitive impairment. And as you might imagine, when someone has a brain injury like that, their friends and family and support group tends to die off, and they become very socially isolated. And there were two things that we looked at that we thought might break that. One is just simply getting on and using the internet and using email to contact people, friends, family, reconnect. That project's just finishing off now. After about 5 years, we've had phenomenal success with that. It's been heartwarming to see the software in action. The second thing we decided that we might want to work on at some point was actually getting them out of their apartments, because they tended to be housebound and not being out in the community and using all the kinds of resources that you and I like to use in the community. So that's the project I want to talk about today, not the email project so much, but both of them kind of came out of this meeting. So we've been working on this now for, I'd say, 3 years. I'm not going to talk about the lead up to this. We spent 2 years. This is a very bottom-up project from my perspective. It's not the kind of way I would necessarily have worked as a computer scientist until I met McKay and we started working on this problem. But it's very bottom-up. So as a computer scientist, I tend to want to build stuff and throw it at people and say, hey, there's a cool piece of technology. Maybe you'll like this, maybe you won't. But we've been trying to, mostly with McKay's urging, really do some studies with people, follow people around, see what they really need, and then generate the technology from that. Now, I think it's worked really well, but I have to say, I'd probably slip back to my old style if I could. But we've been studying this population and the transportation needs of this population for 2 years. We've done focus groups all over the state. We follow people in living centers over months. We follow individuals. So we've tried to do a lot of data. I'm not going to talk so much about that. So that's kind of leading into where this talk starts and what we see the needs are for this population. Okay, this is kind of my warm-up slide here. Let's see. To do something, I must pull out a keyboard maybe and okay. Just briefly. And by the way, I'll take questions on any of this, but I'll have to tell you I'm not a specialist in cognitive impairments. I mean, I pick up what I can from McKay. So this is, in essence, what I got from McKay's side of this slide. But just briefly, these are the kind of problems that we encounter when we're working with this population. So memory, short-term memory problems. Memory problems seem to be kind of universal from what I can see across the population. The executive function problems are very idiosyncratic. And in particular, what's been a challenge, I think, from a computer science perspective, is that I haven't seen the typical brain injured person, so that I can build the typical brain injury interface or piece of software. So I can't just write and say, okay, here's something that will work for a lot of people in this field. That has not been a possibility that I can see. So it's been a real challenge from a software engineering perspective, a computer science perspective, on how you can personalize devices, software to individuals. In fact, it's a major research challenge from my perspective. Okay, so that's all I'm going to really say about kind of the impairment side, and I'll go the right way maybe. The area that we've been looking at are really people in these three kinds of kind of living situations. So some of the people we work with actually live at home in their own home or own apartment. Many live in independent living apartments, and probably just as many live in assisted living centers. Okay, so this is the kind of realm of people we've been looking at and trying to see how we can actually get these people out of their home and out into the community. Okay, just to kind of tell you where we're at, because we're in the middle of this. I'm not actually reporting on something that's done and over with. We're kind of right in the middle. So year one, as I said, we're just completing some small field tests. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. Right now, this is really exciting for me, is we're starting to bring in TBI survivors as longitudinal participants. So we actually are going to follow 2 or 3 people over a year in their on using devices and their navigation in the community. That's just ramping up now. And this one, I know we need to do it. We just haven't started yet. You can't view it as just a TBI problem. There's a whole host of people you got to bring in to make this work. Care providers, family members, all kinds of people have got to kind of come into this problem. And we're still kind of in the planning stages on that piece. Okay, so just briefly, people want to get out. I mean, we found that people had a whole list of places they'd like to go if they could. Now, let me paraphrase that. They didn't say that they wanted to wander aimlessly around Eugene. They listed maybe 3 or 4 places that they wanted to go. Okay, maybe the YMCA was actually exercise was the top one. Shopping, the library. So 3 or 4 places on everyone's list, not always the same, but not an enormous list. So I found this was comforting to me because it made it sound more doable. A lot of the research that I see coming out of computer science these days on navigation, we're not the only group working on this problem, seem to have a model of letting people go anywhere. And actually, the population we work with, that would scare the crap out of them. To be put anywhere and allowed to wander any place in Eugene. There's a set of places they want to go, and we can know that ahead of time. We can know where they want to go, so we don't have to discover what they're trying to do. We can know what they're trying to do, and hence we can try to help them get to the spot, their goal. Okay, so where we're at now, what I'm going to talk about is the kind of the top 3 things we've been looking at. So pre-trip planning, which I think is actually critical. No one is really looking at this, but from our studies, if the trip doesn't start out right, it's doomed from failure right off the bat. And so we've been actually spending a fair amount of time worrying about this pre-trip planning piece when they're still in their home or apartment and getting all the stuff together they need for a trip and getting out to the door of the first bus stop. So we call this the first 100 yards, and I'll talk about that. Getting out the door and getting to the bus stop, we have not started yet working on using the bus. And it's on our list, but we're still, right now, just trying to get people to the bus stop on time with the right items. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, and I'll probably run out of time, but this is the order we're going to go in, is I want to talk about our work with the first 100 yards, some work we're just studying up by a navigation by foot study using a device that helps people navigate on a pedestrian kind of route. This is work we've just started where we're trying to actually bring in more people in the community to help out. So a lot of people carry PDAs now and wireless devices, and we're wondering if we could tap into that in some way. The people in the community themselves can help with this problem of helping a TBI person get to the YMCA or whatever. And then some other big projects we have on the table. I'll stop now if you have questions. I'm about ready to launch into our work on the first 100 yards, but if someone has a question, you can It's mostly background I've given you so far.
I think I've used if you had a TBI, what does it stand for?
Oh, sorry, traumatic brain injury. It's really interesting because when I first got in this field, there was all kinds of acronyms, just like there are in computer science in probably your area. I didn't know any of them. Now I'm throwing them around like, nothing. So TBI stands for traumatic brain injury. Fairly large number, 6 to 10 million in the U.S. And actually, something very sad, the Iraq War TBI has now become the poster injury for, I read in the Times, I think, for Iraq, whereas in the Civil War it was amputees. But now it's kind of the concussions from the bombs. So it's become a big problem from that perspective. A lot of people, you're not wearing your helmet, you hit something, car accidents. That's the kind of causes of TBI. And it's an interesting population because it's not necessarily the dementia population. It's people, knock on wood, like you or I, who happened to have a bad accident, and all of a sudden, we're in this kind of new state. So it's all kind of age groups in this population. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
How are you choosing the people in your study?
Very carefully. That's mostly on the McKay side, my partner side. But we've. I don't know if I have a definitive answer. I can get you that information. McKay has been really the one handling the recruitment because she's tied into all of the places in Eugene that we need to talk to. But I can get you that information offline if you want it. And I can probably send you our IRB form, which we had to fill out, listing all the ways we're going to recruit and so forth. Okay, so let me kind of get into the technical piece. So, I guess this is my vision, not necessarily McKay's. That, from a computer science perspective, I'm kind of interested in the new smart home and how we can have wireless and all kinds of fancy stuff. But I'm going to talk about a specific thing kind of that we've been doing, just targeting transportation. It's this idea called the first 100 yards. And so let me kind of walk you through this. It's a timeline, in essence, and actually there's 2 slides. I'll get you out the door in the next slide. But let's say we start in assisted living center. Shelter care is what runs the TBI centers in Eugene. And the first thing we need to do is what I would call hunting and gathering. So someone enters a trip. Some care provider, some family member says, Mary needs to get her exercise class to the Y on Friday. That gets entered someplace on the computer, not on the net someplace. Someone's home. I don't know. The care provider's home. But eventually, we assume that Mary in her apartment has a computer. So this is an assumption we're making, that Mary does have and that's hooked to the internet. And at that point, the computer notices Mary's got to start getting ready for this trip, and it also knows what items that Mary needs to take with her on this trip. It knows she's going to have to take the bus. She needs a bus pass. It knows she needs her YMCA pass because she's going to the Y for exercise. She may need money and some other items. So what we wanted to do was to actually have the apartment start to help Mary get ready and get out the door with the right items, ready to take the bus down to get her Y class. And so what we've done is worked with some technology, mostly RFID, coupled with something called motes, which I'll talk about in a minute. This is the breadboard version of it, and we got it crammed in this bag. It's not real stylish. It's kind of like a clunky camera bag, but it could be more stylish, I'm pretty sure. I see it more as a satchel or something that's not conspicuous. But it is a bag. And what we've done is we've noticed that people watch a lot of TV in at least the people we look at. Probably that's true in the population in general. The whole U.S. population, but they watch the TV. The TV is a major source of, I can't say interaction, but information. And so instead of having the computer actually try to get this information, we're actually piped through the TV. So we'll take command of their TV, turn it on, turn it to the right station, and then help them try to locate the items that they're going to need for this trip in the house. Now, each item, we were using RFID tags on each of the items, and I've got a picture here. I won't ask it. RFID, do I have to explain RFID? I do. Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. It's really cool. It's so this is an RFID tag, and I've got a paper clip up here to give you the size, and they come in different. This is the smallest that I've seen, although they may be smaller. But they also come in sheets, almost like on printout paper, and you can cut them out, and they're just flat white things, like you can stick them on things, like sticky notes. And so on the back of this, if I could show you, there's one of these stickies, but this one's about this big, and this one also you can stick on things. Okay, now this is an RFID reader here, and this is actually in the bag itself. So our idea was that we stick these RFID tags on all the things that they need, like their wallet and their keys and their meds and all kinds of things that they're going to need. Each of the tags has a unique ID, and then when they put them in the bag, the reader's in the bag, the reader will read that tag being placed in the bag, and then hence the bag knows what's in the bag at any moment. Does that make sense? Now the cool thing about RFID is that there's no, as you can note, there's no battery on this. So there's no power, internal power necessary for this tag to work. The reader actually supplies the tag with the power, and if you ask me much more, I won't be able to tell you because I don't quite understand the engineering piece of it, but I know it works. So that's the idea, is that we're going to tag everything in the home that they're going to possibly need, and then we don't have a way right now of knowing where these are in the apartment at any one point. The person still has to go hunt and gather them together. Okay, there's other technology that might help with that, but we want something cheap and easy to use. So we can't tell the person, go look in the kitchen for your keys. I know the keys are in there. But we can tell if they find the keys and put them in the bag that the keys are in the bag. And by the way, we can also know if they take the keys out and leave them someplace, that they're outside the bag. Okay, so that's the first thing. We use the TV to do this. The TV is hooked up to the computer, and hence there's a lot of interaction between the bag, the computer, and the TV saying, great, you've got your keys now, here's a picture of your meds you're going to need, so forth. So we're using that. Eventually, we hope, everything is placed that is necessary for this trip in the bag, and then the bag says, or the TV both say, let's go, ready to go. Let's get out the door and get to the bus stop. We need to catch the bus. Okay, and the last piece, here's our, on a sunny day, our bag here with our model, or my students. The last piece, we wanted to figure out when they went out the door. This is a big RFID reader. The downside of these small readers, these passive tags and small tags, is the range you can read them, we found, is about maybe that big. Now that works in the bag because we placed the reader in the middle of the bag, and if you put anything on either side, we found we can read what's in there. You couldn't read it this far with this size tag. But they make active tags. This does have a battery in it, and the battery lasts a fair amount of time, let's say 6 months. These you can read at great distance. And so that's what this scheme is. There's a rug that goes over this. This is a reader, and this active tag is actually part of our bag. And when they cross it, we can know that they've left the apartment because we want to know when they're outside. We may get rid of this. I don't know. We're always thinking about this. This is an expense. That's the other. There's also a piece here, like if I build, $100,000 setup for an apartment, who's going to afford that? So this is something I'd actually like to get rid of if I could. But right now, that's how we know they go outside and they're outside. Okay, we're getting ready to actually wire all this in to someone's apartment, assisted living center in Eugene, and try this out longitudinally over 6 to 12 months and see how it all works. Okay, questions about, so that's getting out the door. No technology questions? Okay. Okay, out the door. By the way, I don't know of anyone that's working on this problem right now other than us. If you do, let me know. There are people who worry about wiring up an apartment and figuring out what people are doing, like are they cooking, are they using the shower, are they whatever. But this notion of trying to get together items that are necessary for a trip and get going on that trip, I don't know of anyone else doing. So if anyone sees that, let me know. Yeah.
I just have a question. So just to clarify, I have the button pressed. You're looking over. So are you trying to put the RFID tag on each object, like the set of keys
Yes.
in the home?
Yes.
And is that RFID tag supposed to track the location. So if somebody says, I have my set of keys in my kitchen drawer, how is it going to display on the TV, this is where your keys are?
No. So we haven't solved that problem. We haven't tackled that problem yet. Right now, we're going to see, I'm going to try the low-tech solution. I'm going to see if people can find them before I actually try to build a high-tech solution. The high-tech solution would be we'd put this RFID reader not only in the bag but all over the place, I guess like in the drawers, and I mean somehow we wire the house up so that we can know. But I'm not so sure that's necessary. I want to first see if we say, go find your keys, if they can find them. If that's starting to fail, then I'm going to have to address your issue. Right now, no, I can't tell where these keys are unless they're in the bag. I mean, unless they're next to this reader, and this reader's the only place we've got it is in the bag right now. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious. Have you come across any issues regarding, since you said there's no typical TBI individual, regarding some individuals perhaps being somewhat demeaned?
Say that one.
Being offended, being told, I know I have to get my keys, I know I have my wallet, I have it all. You know, since there's no one typical TBI, has that ever come across?
We'll find out. I mean, we haven't run this longitudinally. So far in field studies, no. No, we haven't run it. You're worried that we're giving it looks like too much of a help or too much of a crutch to doing this kind of task.
Yeah, and I guess more generally, I mean, given that there's no typical TBI individual,
TBI impairment, I would say, is what I was saying more typical. There's no typical TBI impairment like
Sure,
everyone has initiation and X problem. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem. I don't know the answer to that until we actually we go out and try it out. But what I have found is that people don't want to look conspicuous in public. And this bag is on the edge of being conspicuous. I mean, it's okay, but I'd rather have something else. But if you've got something like a wearable headband that is putting out a see-through display, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So that's the biggest thing I've seen. Is we can't make this look like some nerdy thing that someone's wearing. That maybe I would like that, but these people wouldn't. So, yeah, the closest I can come to that is if people do okay at finding stuff, then we can maybe need to shut off these reminders. Maybe we need to adapt the system, saying they're getting better, and then we don't have to keep bugging them all the time. I can easily see that happening. Yeah.
Would GPS or GIS technology work with this?
That's my next slide.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, sorry.
So there is a GPS unit on here. I just haven't talked about it yet because we're not outdoors yet. We're still trying to get out the door. But I want to emphasize, my first inclination was to look out at the GPS issue and being outdoors. If this doesn't get done right, it doesn't matter. I mean, if they don't get out on time or if they don't have the right items, you can lead them wherever you want, but they're not going to. The trip will fail. So I think this is really a critical issue of getting everything together you're going to need.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so out the door, we've looked at getting them to the first bus stop. And the bus stop is within 100 yards of the living center, typically closer than that. And so we've got the bag, and we do have GPS on board the bag, and it's been working okay. I was dubious about GPS when I first started out, but that was probably a year and a half ago. I didn't think it was good enough, but it seems to be good enough in the current technology that I've seen. What has not been good enough to date is the GPS you get in a cell phone. We tried a cell phone because if we could do it with a cell phone, that's cool. I mean, that's a ubiquitous device. It's cheap. But the GPS on the cell phones doesn't seem to be enhanced enough. I'm not exactly sure what, but you can get within a couple blocks of where you're at. But for particular pedestrian navigation, you need to be really close. And we haven't found cell phones doing that. I'm hoping it will eventually that we can do that. But right now, why? Because the GPS unit on here is kind of expensive. It's like $300, I think, for the GPS unit we have on this. And I'd like to get rid of that if I could, out of the bag. But it does work pretty well. Now, the other thing I didn't tell you is that the bag is also is wireless, and so it can talk to other things. Well, you saw a little bit of it. It's talking to the computer in the apartment, but it can also talk to other motes, which I'll describe in just a minute. And so we've got a bus stop mote that we're getting ready to try. This is the packaging for it, but we can store some information on this thing here, and we're working to make it, all weather, so we can stick it outside. This does draw power, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we're putting that there, and right now we're using this in broadcast mode, so it just broadcasts actually information out to anyone who's listening. And then when the bag gets in range of the bus stop, it can pick up this information. Now, right now, this mode is two-way. It could be two-way. Right now, we're just broadcasting, though, so there's no interaction. There's all kinds of strange and wondrous things we've thought about doing this, leaving sticky notes on the bus stop. There's kind of cool things you could do. But right now, it's just broadcasting. And I think all we have it right now is broadcasting bus information, bus arrival information, although we've talked about other things that are possible. Okay, so that guy can go there, and we can lead someone to the bus stop. And then the other thing we're doing is we're thinking about putting these motes on the buses themselves. And we've got, this mote is actually pretty small. This makes it look kind of big. It's probably about that big as opposed to that big, as it shows on the screen. We've got a casing for this, and we were thinking of strapping this actually under the bus. One of the people that works on the project's done something similar with trucks, where he strapped wireless devices on the bottom of a truck. We're not thinking of actually the fixed route buses. We're thinking of the special need vans that run around town. It's called Rideshare in Eugene, and TriMet has a name for this as well. I can't remember what it is. What is it?
Lyft. It's called
Lyft,
Lyft.
okay. And what we'd like to do is we found a real problem. We talked to the rideshare bus drivers, and again, they kind of emphasized this problem of people weren't showing up. I mean, they make the call, and then they just wouldn't show up. And they won't go in. They won't go in to try to round someone up. So if you're not there out at the rideshare thing, then they just leave. And LTD at least said this was they didn't give me a percentage, but the impression I got, this is a big deal. I mean, they were losing. There are a lot of times people weren't where they were supposed to be, and the bus, the scheduled van showed up and left.
In Vancouver, they charge you even if you don't show up. There's a connector, so if you don't show up, and
I'm not sure that would do any good. Maybe it would. I don't know. They'd probably forget to pay. I don't know. So we're just thinking. Again, this is all very speculative now. I just wanted to show you because I thought it might connect with maybe some people in the audience that I think it is. I know it's possible to put some of the same wireless technology on vehicles, and we're contemplating and have some agreement with LTD, although I wouldn't say it's in writing, to put some of this on their special needs vans. Okay, so all of this is the technology piece. This is what I feel most comfortable with. We're getting ready to try out now with a living center and the special needs van that comes by that living center to pick people up. So our goal is to get folks ready out to the Y, return back, all with the right stuff and the right, yeah.
What kind of audible output is helping the TBI participants get to the bus stop? Is there?
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to talk about that. I'll give you the short answer. The short answer is we're using audio. So we've got, it's not shown here, but we've got kind of a iPod type earpiece or whatever you want out of here. The bag also has a speaker that we can play sounds out of, but we typically don't want to do that for that conspicuous piece because you don't want someone in the thing and then the bag starts talking and everyone's going to start looking and so forth. So we've kind of avoided that, and I want to. That's my next, actually, kind of segue into my next piece. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you if the reverse was true about, and I know this never happens that a bus would be late. But I was wondering if it could communicate back to the person that the bus was 5 minutes late, and that because I know that with some special needs folks, the whole concept of it didn't
Waiting.
come when it was supposed to
Right.
come, and it's sort of agitating.
That's our ideal. To do that, this mode is going to have some kind of connectivity to something else. So right now it's just stuck on the bus stop, and if it was late, someone would actually have to program it in being late. We want to eventually have this hooked up wirelessly to other things, so it would have that information. We've thought about it's going to be 20 minutes late. By the way, Joe's Cafe is around the corner. If you want to wait there for coffee, we know you like that kind of place. So there's all these kind of scenarios we can play out if this became a little bit more sophisticated. So yeah, that's kind of on our long-range plan. It's a good idea.
So if we're installing these things on the bus stops, why not just install something that's connected to the transit network that just does it for everyone?
I know. You're seeing a little bit of the computer science side of this. Remember when I said I like to do technology and so forth? So we've thought about that. Why not have everyone will be in the big cloud and we'll just download it directly to the bag wirelessly over whatever means we want to. Why do we need this thing locally? We've been debating a little bit. Why would you ever want local information? What would be useful about local information that's not kept in some server?
That's not really what I was asking.
Oh, sorry.
If we had something installed at the bus stop,
right?
That's getting information about bus arrivals and things.
Okay.
Why not just display it at the bus stop?
I see. I see. As TriMet does. Yeah, I think that's not happened. I can kind of give you hand-wavy answers. It hasn't happened in Eugene. It's probably not happening. TriMet's pretty bleeding edge from my perspective. It's probably not happening in 90% of the current transit districts. Eventually, maybe it will. Yeah, I know. That's the kind of the I don't see it actually being useful for that point. It's just what we're doing now to test it. I see it more useful if it has local information. I thought you were asking a more general question, which we also debate, is this bag could pick up a wireless signal. So why doesn't it just tune into TriMet's whatever that service is they have, telling you when all the buses are going to be late or whatever, and forget the display altogether? And I think the answer would be, if we were in TriMet, that's probably true. I mean, that's probably what we would do. So I've been thinking a little bit, is there anything, and this is a question to you in some sense, is there anything useful about knowing something locally that's not necessarily kept in a server someplace about the global transit state, but something local that might be useful to give to someone as they get near the bus stop? I don't have a full answer for that. But that's kind of what we're debating. If we can't think of something, then maybe this will go away. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, how much of having this on the bus stop is just to help that person get to the right stop? I mean, I don't know.
Not that much, because we got GPS on here, and we typically can get them to the right stop with the GPS piece. Yeah. I've been just debating whether there's something, again, that's local, that local merchants, I don't know, something that might be of use to this specific spot, where this is on the planet, sits on the planet. And if we can find it, then the next time you hear me, I'll still have it in. Maybe I'll take it out. I don't know. You can make the same argument, by the way, about this. I mean, the TriMet buses and other buses, I think LTD as well, have something like this already on the buses. Now, I don't think, I know our special needs vans don't, but maybe they will. Maybe this could go away as well. We all become living under some giant wireless communication net, and the bag just plugs into that and gets all the information. That's possible. This is me kind of playing around. Sorry. I like motes and these wireless things. I'm always trying to think of ways they might connect together. But we haven't proven this is necessary. Okay, let me... I'm going to run out of time, so let me just tell you some of this other study we've just finished, and that's this navigation by foot piece. Well, let me tell you how we set this up. So this is an iPack, and people are carrying it very clunky, and we're finding it's very clunky. But we were trying to test out what kind of navigating on foot. In an unknown route, navigating on foot, what was the best way to give people navigation information on this small screen? And we tried 4 different ways of looking at this. We tried audio, where they had an earpiece in. We tried, oh, I'll show you the 4. I'll go through the 4. And we're just finishing up with this. And I think it's kind of interesting, the results of all this. The routes were in Springfield, Oregon. They were roughly, let's say, 2 or 3 blocks. So this wasn't an enormous walking kind of task. And we ran a set of TBI folks through these. I think we've run about 20 now. We'd like to run another 10. Okay, so these are the 4 things that we looked at. We looked at point of view, audio, textual, and aerial. I'll give you examples of each, and then I'll tell you kind of what the results were out of the study. Okay, so this was point of view. And so what we did is we walked the route ourselves ahead of time. We took pictures, and I'm calling point of view. It's meant to be like you're looking at where you're going, and then we overlay this arrow showing you where you should be turning or whatever, or which direction you should be going. Okay, so we did this for this is the point of view piece. Now, any problems with this right off the bat?
Well, I'm not sure how it's getting the image on there, but
we predid it. So it's not going into.
What if something changes?
Exactly.
Their leaves aren't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or, gee, it's not sunny.
Right.
I mean, all of those things I think have an effect. What if there's a car parked here?
Right.
Or what if I've got a car and it's not there? So it's interesting how far people can abstract away from that, or it really has to be pretty tight to what it looks like today. So that's a problem, I think, with this style. Now, I'll tell you off the bat, I thought this style was going to be the one chosen, and it wasn't as the one that was the most effective. Yeah.
Would it help if it would actually show the street number and name?
You mean up? Oh, you mean where here?
Yeah.
It was hard to read from that far back.
Like she said that it was difficult because it might be rainy or something. But if you could actually see the street address and name, maybe that would help out a little bit more.
In some cases it might, but in a lot of cases it was too small in the picture, I think, to be readable. Okay, so this was one. And again, just some examples. Again, you're supposed to be walking straight. This just says keep walking straight. And finally, we get to the bus stop. Okay, audio. I'll see if I can play this. Nope. How do I do this? Let's see if that'll work. No.
Left click on the.
Oh,
continue walking forward and cross the alleyway.
Okay. It was really. You'll see, it's just a audio of our written instructions. Now, this was played through an earpiece on the connected the iPack up to an earpiece. So it wasn't they had to hear the iPack. It was actually on an earpiece. Now, the interesting thing about this is they didn't have to attend to the iPack on their arm. They could just, there was nothing, there was no interaction with this iPack on any of the trials. It was all simply information given. Yeah.
With the audio, would they need to be having the thing on their arm even? Could it be something
No,
else? Yeah.
And that's why I wanted it to win. It would be a big winner if they didn't have to have this stupid thing on their arm, or the bag in some sense, or whatever. Yeah. Okay, textual is kind of what you would or I might write down for someone. Turn right at the intersection and continue walking and so forth. And then this last one. This last one's interesting because I'm pretty sure TriMet has some of these up on their webpage for some part of downtown. These aerial images, and so this was what they would see is you are here and you're going to need to walk and then make this turn and go down here. Okay, before I tell you, any ideas on, so what we measured two things. We measured overall performance on number of errors made, hesitations, confusion along the route, and so forth. Then we also took subjectively what people said they liked the best out of those 4 modes. Each person ran in all 4 modes. Okay, so we actually had 4 different routes in Eugene that we ran across. Any ideas what you might think would be the best if you were trying to navigate in a strange city, let's say, and had this device strapped to your arm or something?
I was going to ask, is there the possibility of combining?
Of what?
Combining the audio, for example.
I think that's an excellent idea. We didn't do it here because I really wanted a baseline of what just individually. I think in the end, probably combining is a good idea, but we didn't do that. We just took them as a baseline for each one. Yeah, Rob.
Oh, here.
I was going to say that the way I behave in strange cities is I try to be inconspicuous. So if I've got a map in my pocket, I might be walking down the street, but I'm going to keep walking and sort of look nonchalant and then pull off to the side and hide behind a post and open up the map. So something where I have to have my arm in front of me like this, I would want something.
I'm past that. I just pull it out. I don't care anymore. I've given up hope. Yeah, that's interesting. So this was kind of contrived. And by the way, there's several things that were contrived about this. There was no GPS on this unit because we were worried that the GPS wasn't good enough. So these would keep flashing as they were moving. I mean, it would keep updating where you need to walk as they were walking. But I was worried that GPS was too flaky to do that, and so we actually had kind of a Wizard of Oz setup where a researcher followed the person and hit the button to wirelessly change the piece, so it'll make sure it all happened at once. You could easily say, well, what if one of them was missed? Well, it could be big trouble. So this is all kind of perfect. Every time they needed it, they got it. So there was that piece. And they knew they were running obviously an experiment. So, wanting to not look bad, I didn't see that was an issue for this thing. Yeah.
Steve, I don't know if you could, but what would you say the sort of the cognitive ability of these people were? Like, are they maybe 8th grade, 9th grade?
No. So cognitive ability, and you're now talking to a non-expert. With the TBI population, it's not functional. It's not IQ. It's an impairment in memory or in initiation or something. It's not necessarily. It's not like developmentally disabled.
So reading skills.
I think the best I can tell you is that they were all living in a semi-independent living facility or in their own home. And the grade goes up. Some living facilities are like full nursing or full care. We didn't take any subjects there. These were all people who wanted to get out and walk, but just felt too intimidated to do so. I don't know if that's exactly an answer, but I get confused about that as well.
So they're likely to be able to read well.
Read is not an issue. Reading's not an issue. Okay. It's funny. It's like again, knock on wood, one of us had a brain injury. We have all of our life experiences up until that point, but now all of a sudden we've got some other impairments. Reading is not one, unless it was prior injury. So it's not this kind of functional level. It's these other kind of I say again, memory is a big one, but staying on task, so forth, those kind of things. Question?
I have
Sorry.
a question to follow up on his question about. Did you guys think about just people getting a split? Did you guys think about or look into possible assaults to these people who are actually using the technology?
Yeah, we worry a lot about. There's a whole set of issues that have come up. Again, I view this as why I like bottom up now. Bottom up is we actually study the population and then build technology. Another issue that came up was people got physically tired. They've been sitting in their apartments, not getting any physical exercise. All of a sudden, we've opened this door to them get out, walk. They got tired quick. And so that was another thing I wouldn't have predicted happening. Yeah, we worry about assaults. This population is often preyed upon. And so, again, that conspicuous piece, something that looks funny is not something we really want. Yeah, we worry about that a lot, actually. So, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, for me personally, and probably to be less inconspicuous as well. I tend to do most of my navigation in my automobile with MapQuest. So text would probably work best for me. And also I would imagine that it more likely you see people in and around reading text messages from their iPod.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Deleting them. So I would have guessed the text, if there is no issue with their ability to read, then I would guess that text would probably generally be easier for folks.
Well, let me give you our results. So this again is on performance, not on their subjective like or dislike of any of these four modes. And so audio was a good score is better, high score is better. Audio was a winner on this. Now, the cognitive rehabilitation specialists on the project predicted this would not be so. Their prediction was that audio is hard to retain, that it's just harder to retain than seeing something visually, either written or in graphic form. That when you get an audio cue or direction, you just lose it more quickly. And so we were a little bit surprised that the audio came out, although we were queuing pretty often. I'd say within every 10 seconds, maybe, we were queuing on this route. Maybe a little longer than that, but not much longer. So there's a lot of queuing going on, yeah.
If they needed a step repeated, could they get that?
No. They would have to, well, yes, they'd stop, and then we repeat it. So it was, again, a little bit contrived that way. But we would count that repeat as a downgrade of the score, that they had to have something repeated. Well, this, I mean, to me, is good news from a user interface point of view, because if we could get away with audio, I think it fits with a lot of kinds of things that we might actually deliver when we try this in the field. So I'm pretty happy so far with this. Yeah.
Did any of the test subjects elaborate on why they liked the audio best? Because I think if I were somebody with traumatic brain injury, maybe I might like audio because, based on psychology, I would want somebody there to kind of guide me and say, this is how you're supposed to do it. Or did they just think that was just the best way?
That's an interesting question.
They retained the information.
If I remember right, I'm sorry I didn't bring the subjective slide. I think audio was not a clear winner from the subjective side. So I don't think it was like everyone said, boy, we liked audio the best out of all these. In fact, I think text might have been actually higher subjective score than audio. But this, again, this is our kind of raw performance of number of errors made and so forth. So no one said what you just said, that it felt more like someone there with me or more comforting. It might have easily been that case. So what else? I think I need to quit. So what I'm going to the last thing we're doing, very speculative, although we've started to do some field study on this, is trying to get people in the community who might be willing to help. Neighborhood Watch, not Neighborhood Watch. What's the other one where a house puts up a sign saying, you can come in here if you need trouble, or what's the name of that program for kids?
Block Parent.
Something, yeah. The signs are up. Something that says, this is a place where we can, we'll help you if you're lost on a trip or some such. And then they will be able to talk to that bag in some way, find out what's going on, and potentially get the person back on track. Right now, the trips that fail typically have to have someone come and get them, and that's really a problem. I mean, you have to go find the person, get them, and someone has to drive and go get them. So it's not any notion of just kind of getting them back on track. It's really, you got to extract them. And if we could stop that, we were feeling that would open up a lot more independence for this group. Because before you go out, you almost have to find someone who's going to come and get you, potentially can come and get you. So if we could actually nudge people in the right way along the trip, we're feeling that's going to open up more independence for people. Yeah.
So if they get lost, with the GPS, or would they receive audio confirmation?
We haven't got to that. That's our next big project. So I'm assuming many of you are saying, well, yeah, all that's fine and good, but what if they get lost? That's a really hard problem. Our next thing we're going to tackle, when people get disoriented or lost, can you get them back on track using this bag and some of the stuff that I've shown you? That's going to be a really interesting problem for us. So everything I've shown you, everything was working all kind of fine and dandy. So I don't have an answer. Sorry.
I guess this question is something of the skeptical, but given all these challenges, all these costs to this project, I mean, it sounds pretty immense. Trying to step back, it almost seems like subsidizing taxi services might be a much easier answer to this problem.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or just some other means of...
If you could subsidize taxi services, I think it might work. The rideshare doesn't seem to be working very well. So that's a subsidized,
sure.
Kind of transit piece.
Instead of
People do take taxis. People do take taxis in this population. In fact, it might be voted their number one, but they can't afford it. They can't afford it very often.
Right. But I mean, the amount of money that's being spent on this project is pretty huge.
Okay. I hope you're not on my review, pal.
I know.
But I'll think about answering that in my next proposal. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I think this would allow some physical activity if you're willing to get out.
Yeah, it is. I think a taxi is good for point to point, but my goal would actually be allow them to, maybe go from the library to someplace else in the downtown area or whatever. So I can think of some answers maybe.
This is all reminding me of an experience I had last week. I was at a Mac stop out in Washington County, and there was a Korean girl who didn't speak English who had nothing but an address and was showing it to bus drivers and people at the stop trying to figure out where to go. And what I ended up doing was calling a friend who got on Google and got on TriMet and did the trip planner and tried to figure out where to send her.
Right.
I wrote down all the directions, gave it to her, and told her to show the bus driver. She then got on the bus. The bus driver said, no, go get on that bus instead. And it was just kind of a mess.
That's a nice story, actually.
But my question is about, have you looked at land use issues with this population? Do they tend to live in more high-density areas?
Yes.
I would guess that it's easier if they do. And do any of them have to transfer buses? And it just appears to me that if they lived in, say, a transit-oriented development, it would be a lot easier. They would have a stronger community safety net as well to get them to their destination.
Yeah, in fact, I think Eugene is probably somewhat on the extreme on that side of having a pretty good transit system and a pretty good safety net potential already. I was worried you were going to say something if we went out to La Grande or some other maybe a more rural area if any of this would work. So I have a feeling that we're going to be okay in Eugene. I don't know if it's going to actually be able, if we're going to be able to take that model and pass it off someplace else. I like your example a lot. I often kind of say if you're in a foreign city, in some ways you're impaired because you can't speak the language, you can't even read the signs, you can't tell anyone what you're trying to do, you try to hand them stuff. If somehow that could be solved with this bag, I think that'd be kind of cool. That's a nice story.
And in this case, her friend whose house she was trying to get to didn't have a car, so she didn't have the someone come pick me up safety net. And she had to transfer buses twice, and it was off in some subdivision. So,
just as an extreme of that, we talked to some of the bus drivers in Eugene, and they said folks don't know where they're going. They forget where they're going, and they don't know their name, and they don't know their address. And so they spend a lot of time, the bus drivers say, just trying to figure out who they are. And where were they going at all? Because the people have kind of lost track of what their trip was. And we were thinking if the bag could actually give that information to the bus driver, that would be really useful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading some of the stuff they've been doing in Sweden with the flex routes and the flex service, and have been pretty interested in the technology that they've been using there. Just as far as being able.
I don't know it.
You don't know the project. It's in Gothenburg. It's called Flex Routes, and you'll find information on the
okay. I'll look
on
that
the
up.
web. But it basically what you do is you call into a number. It's basically on a fixed route, but it's what you would call a deviated fixed route. But there aren't necessarily points along the way that you would specifically stop at. But the bus about 15 minutes beforehand, able to pick them up and then deposit them to where they need to go. It's
On a fixed route.
Well, it's a if you will, it's a flexible fixed route.
Oh.
A point up at that it starts from and a point that it ends, and then it's flexible in between that. You have to use, you can either use a phone, or if it's like at a major shopping center, thanks. If it's at a major shopping center, they'll have a place where you can just push a button and it selects the information. You let them know where you want to go.
So some kind of marriage of the rideshare fixed route piece or something.
And they've had some real significant success as far as cost associated, because as you probably know, paratransit service is really enormously expensive.
Right,
Average
exactly.
is about $20 a ride, and I think it has some real application. So I was wondering if you knew of that project. And
I didn't know of the project. I'll look it up.
They also, just have some really interesting technology that they can use.
Are these units affordable to the population?
I would say not currently, but we're working on that. And I hate to say, I don't know if I could give a figure of what they're going to end up, let's say this bag in some kind of production form. I mean, the GPS unit is expensive. The RFID reader is expensive. So both of those things are, the RFID reader is probably $200, and the GPS, as I said, is about $300. I'm always trying to get ubiquitous consumer devices involved, because then we all know the prices just head for the bottom. I think we're a ways off before making it affordable. So we're back to kind of that question of whether it's just easier to use the money for the taxi at the moment. But yeah.
Are the technologies involved, could they be like integrated and shrunk down pretty small?
Yes, they can and definitely can. But I'm a little bit worried about that GPS unit. I mean, it's pretty small now. I don't see its cost going down greatly. So.
How have you factored in the role of the caregiver?
We're trying. I mean, right now, the caregiver, by the way, on these trips really has to be 24/7 on the trip. Monitoring the trip, which is really a problem. You need to have someone who can come and can pick up a phone and come and get someone and bring them back if they get into trouble. And that really limits the person making the trip, because the caregiver has to say, okay, I'm willing to sit by my phone, and do that. So if we can somehow, what we're trying to do now is kind of unburden the caregiver if we can, and not have to have them be on call for this trip. The other thing the caregiver does is put information in about the trips and the items. So I kind of showed you that in the first part. They would enter the YMCA trip and the items that are necessary and all of that kind of stuff. Did you have some other ideas on?
They're just an idea. As if I wasn't sure what their role was, which is why I was asking. But maybe have them actually be the audio, have a live person behind it. It would lower the cost of the unit as a whole.
I don't know if it would or not.
If you're already going to be paying them to provide the service, just...
The care provider, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, we're not exactly paying. We're actually trying to, it gets piggybacked on the kinds of things they already have to do. If we're talking about a care provider at a living center, someone will have to, the TBI person will have to come and say, would you be willing, can I go try to make this trip? Would you be willing to kind of be on call for me during this trip? And you expect the care provider to say, well, yeah, I can probably do it between, next Tuesday between 1 and 2 or some such. So it really limits the traveler, is what I'm saying. And the care providers are all overworked right now anyway. So we're not paying them anything at the moment. Or if you can get mom or dad to do it. But I don't know if I answered your question.
It was just an idea.
Yeah.
I was just curious, during any of your field runs, did you have any problems with the hardware? Like, did the equipment malfunction?
Yes,
And if so, how
it did. I think the iPACs, from what, I don't know if anyone's used iPACs in their work here, the iPACs are made by Hewlett-Packard. They seem to be the standard device used in this kind of research. I see it a lot in other research papers I read. I think they're pretty flaky. I'm really surprised that someone hasn't done something better. Sorry, I don't work for Hewlett-Packard, as you can see. But, yeah, we've had a lot of trouble, mostly on the wireless side. But they also freeze up. I think they're pre-Windows. I mean, I think there was, like in the bad old days, when we had Windows constantly freezing up and whatever. It's been a major pain. And I'm dubious that I would make an iPac the center of any kind of, assistive technology. So it's kind of cool because it has the biggest screen of the PDAs. It has a lot of memory. It has a pretty good processor. But it's been flaky. I think we're a long ways from something we're just going to give someone and say, yeah, go use this. That's a good question. I'm way over, but I'm happy. I'm not going anywhere. Oh, you're here. Wait, 1:30. Do other people have to ask questions? Does anyone have to get their question form filled out? Yeah.
So theoretically, every bus stop has one of those fixed monitors to let you know that you're getting to the bus stop you want to be at.
Ask the question again.
Every bus stop has one of those fixed monitors.
In our scheme?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No.
Just
no.
the ones that they choose, like those three big ones, the library, YMCA, and shopping.
You're now talking in the future, because right now, the bus stop, I think, the bus stop one I showed you, I probably shouldn't have showed you, because it's me as a techie, saying, this would be cool, let's stick a moat on the bus stop and let's see what we can do with it. I don't think it's necessary right now. I mean, the GPS will get them to the bus stop. The biggest worry I'd have if the bus is late and they have time to kind of lose track of what's going on. But right now, I haven't found the killer app for that bus stop moat. And that's probably what you're thinking about. So yeah, I could stick them at the three bus stops in Eugene that probably make the most sense. But I don't have a really killer app for them right now. There's a lot of people doing this, by the way, in the research field, in computer science. So they're putting kind of these ubiquitous devices all over the environment, all over the infrastructure, physical infrastructure. But I question what they're going to be used for in this world where we've got wireless every place. So if you have that, why do we need a local device like this? That's the question I'm continuing to ask myself. And I don't have a strong answer for that right now. But you see a lot of it. And if you read the research papers, there's people just sticking ubiquitous stuff all over the place in the cities. And yeah.
I could give one comment. I don't speak for TriMet, but the question came up about why don't they have the transit tracker message boards at every stop, and it's essentially a cost question. So they place them at the
maybe you could argue a cost on this.
Traffic stops, but the idea was that if they waited a while, that the ubiquity of cell phones, I mean, you can just dial create ride, your stop number and get the transit tracker. You can go to the web. So the idea was that, there's still a question, are cell phones ubiquitous? But I think they were kind of waiting for that to happen, so they didn't have, 5,000 of these obsolete.
I've been thinking that same question about the transit tracker, and I actually talked to TriMet a little bit. I was trying to think again of this local question. What local information could this transit tracker screen give you? Forget the bus stuff. I mean, maybe it shows a picture of something that's happening nearby that you want to see, or I'm just trying to think of the local piece. Otherwise, you're right. I mean, you just get it on your cell phone. You don't need to have this at every bus stop. But I haven't given up hope. There's something we can do with these dang things that shows you something that's local weather, right? Something.
Well, I think that it could have a really strong application because not everyone has a cell phone, and I think there's a large population that won't ever have a cell phone.
Right. So if that's the case, then it just acts as the way it's supposed to. But I was actually thinking of doing double duty. So it'll show you the bus, and then it'll do something else like, oh, by the way, there's also, if you look across the street, here's a picture across the street. Right. There's this art, I don't know.
Before we thank our speaker, next week Jennifer Rosales from PB Placemaking is going to talk about her handbook for livable streets, setting trends by applying the road diet. Jennifer was selected internally with Parsons Brinkerhoff, received a fellowship to develop this handbook, so since she works here in Portland, we're anxious to see the results of her work. So let's thank Steve Fickas for his great presentation. Thank you.